right, everyone. Hello and welcome. I am Trellis Williams. Glad to be with you. We had a few technical difficulties on the last stream. I hope people are able to come and check this one out. So if you're able to see this right now, if you could go ahead and like it and send the link around, just so that people can know where we are. Well, anyway, so talking about a little bit of 18U girls today. PCA on top of the league after defeating the Laurel Lady Nighthawks. Very close margin, but they're able to get that win. We'll talk about that a little bit. Muddy River Counselors 9-0. They are rolling, and we'll talk about them. Also, Coach Cliff Jenkins joining us today. He's the head coach of the Laurel Lady Nighthawks, and we'll talk to him a little bit later on. So we got a really good show here tonight that we hope we can make it through. The MSAHA Basketball Weekly Show begins right now. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We appreciate you joining us. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button. There's a subscribe button down there, and I think you ought to hit it. This is the TSJW Network YouTube channel. So talking a little bit about last week's games. So we had the Laurel Nighthawks taking on the Jackson Victors. This was hosted by the Victors in Byram, Mississippi. So the Victors do not have any girls team, so this was just 18U boys. As far as 18U is concerned, I do want to remind you all that we only cover 18U sports. So 18U girls, 18U boys. We do not cover 16U. So 18U boys, Laurel and Jackson. Jackson getting that win 63-50, and the Victors doing very well. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on today. We got another Victors score as well, but the Victors doing pretty well, and they sit right there in that number 3 spot and solidly in that 3 spot so far. And then also on that night, Thursday night, November 14th, the Muddy River Counselors and the Meridian Flyers matched up in Hickory. 18U girls action, Meridian getting the win 51-38. We talked to Coach Scott Sherman a little bit last week, and he's doing a good job coaching that team. He's got 7 seniors on the team, and they've been playing with him for years, and they have good chemistry, looking good out there. Meridian took the win over the Muddy River Counselors 51-38, took an early lead, and the Counselors fell behind and couldn't come back to get that win. So Meridian able to get a step up on the Muddy River Counselors 51-38. Now, the last time those two teams had played was in the tournament last year, where Meridian was up by 14 points there at the end of the third quarter, and the Counselors came back and won the game on a buzzer beater. So Meridian remembered that one. Didn't let it happen this time in Hickory. 51-38 win for Meridian. 18U boys, the Muddy River Counselors get the win 73-59. So only a 14-point win for the Counselors. Meridian stuck with the Counselors early. Muddy River able to get the advantage there right before halftime. Second half went to the Counselors, and the Counselors were up by as many as 25. Meridian was able to cut it down there in that fourth quarter, make it a 14-point loss there. But Meridian, they're definitely structured well. They'll be very competitive in this league, and particularly those 3 through 6 seeds in the conference, very competitive. You got Jackson, you have Laurel, you have Meridian, you have Hattiesburg, you have Macomb, and then even get Tupelo in there a little bit. I've got my standings over here to the side. It should be interesting seeing all those teams play against each other, and we got some more of that here from last week and from this upcoming week. Royal Hurricanes and Tupelo Titans was on the Friday night, and the Tupelo Titans get the win. Didn't get a score for that one, just got the result. Tupelo with the win. And then on Saturday, Tupelo and Jackson facing off in Byram, and the Victors again rolling. 45-point win, 75 to 30. So Jackson looking pretty good. Now they are 4-1 in conference. And so they put themselves in a pretty good position moving forward to get a good seed here in the league. Also on Saturday, Laurel and PCA. Now, this was our MSAHA game of the week last week, the girls' game, particularly for Laurel and PCA, that really determined who's the number one team at this point in time in the season moving forward. But we've seen a lot of tough competition there at the top between PCA and Laurel and Meridian as well. Those three teams right up there at the top of the league. And all three of those teams have taken on the counselors as well, and we'll talk about those a little later on as well. But Laurel PCA for girls in Lacombe, PCA winning 34-33. Very, very, very tight there. And I think that just reflects what we're going to see this season. It's a very interesting year in girls basketball, unlike last year. Last year, everybody knew that it was a battle for second place. Laurel was just that much more talented and better than everybody else last season. This year, Laurel lost three seniors and two bigs on their team where they were able to dominate the rebounding battle. But Laurel's been looking good as well, and we'll talk about that a little later on. 18U boys, PCA winning 45-32. And now, tight game, very low scoring to what we usually see in this league. But PCA able to beat Laurel 45-32, hold them off there in Lacombe. So PCA holding on to that number 2 spot right now pretty handily. Except for then, it's not pretty handily. They are tied with the victors except in record, but they beat Jackson by 27 points. So they hold on to that number 2 spot. PCA's only lost to the Muddy River Counselors. So then also on that Saturday, Hattiesburg-Macomb. So Macomb hosting Hattiesburg. 18U girls, Macomb's kind of struggled a little bit. We've talked about this in past weeks. They're in a building up stage of their girls program. They lose by 20, 47-27 to Hattiesburg. 18U boys, Macomb getting the win. Their first conference win as members of the MSAHA. They beat Hattiesburg 64-56. This is a close one. 8-point win for Macomb. Very close battle. Gators get the win. Gators are an interesting team to look at. And definitely want to get their coach on the show soon as well, just to kind of get the background on the Macomb Gators. Very interested to hear about that, as well as just kind of what the thought process is coaching this basketball team. You're talking about a team with talent, a team with height, and they get this win over Hattiesburg. Big deal. And then for Hattiesburg, just a tough loss. They lose again. They're 0-4 in conference, but they're not a bad team. I'm telling you. Saw that game from last week, Counselors and Forerunners. Forerunners are not a bad team. They will win some conference games. They just haven't yet. And this conference is pretty competitive right now. It's hard. If you're right there in the thick of it, you can find yourself losing every single one. So it's definitely not an easy situation here. Last night, Tuesday night, we had some more. The Muddy River Counselors and the Laurel Nighthawks. Girls action. Laurel wins 61-42. Laurel pulls away late. The Counselors made it competitive, tied the ball game in the third quarter at 35, but Laurel able to storm away. And the thing about those Lady Nighthawks is that they're able to keep running even when the game gets late. Even when they've been running the whole game, they keep on going, and they were able to pull away, get the win, hit some shots that pulled them away as well. 61-42 win for Laurel, and that allowed them to be able to move ahead of the Counselors there. They were already kind of ahead, but they would have fallen behind if they would have lost. So that put them ahead and put them right behind where PCA is after losing to PCA on Saturday and kind of getting back after a game like that. But a challenging game for Laurel, but they're able to win by 19 points, nearly 20 points, putting up 61 points. Definitely good for that Laurel Lady Nighthawks team. 18U boys, Muddy River Counselors, Laurel Nighthawks, 66-53 is the final score. Now, early in the game, Counselors didn't get off to a hot start. Laurel doing a good job defensively. We were scoreless for a long time in that game. But the Counselors able to pull away, had a good halftime lead. I believe it was about 20 points, able to move the game up to 30 at one point. But Laurel came storming back. Not quite enough to get the win, but enough to make it to get the fire back going. And there at the end, dropping that one by 13.66 to 53 to the Muddy River Counselors. Counselors 9-0 on the season. Laurel 2-3 in conference, 6-4 overall. And so that's what we've seen this week. And one thing that we were kind of talking about, PCA on top of the girls' conference, on top by 1 point, literally 1 point, 34-33 win over Laurel. But very excited to see this battle take place. If we look at the girls' standings right now, and I'm looking at it right now, PCA number 1 with a 4-0 conference record, Laurel 2-1 at number 2. Then you got Meridian at 2-2 at number 3. Number 4, the Muddy River Counselors at 2-3 in conference. Number 5 is Hattiesburg with a 1-2 record, and then Macomb last in 6 with 0-3 record in conference. So the Counselors, their 2 wins were over Macomb and Hattiesburg, the teams below them, and their 3 losses are to the teams above them. So the Counselors have played everybody. Meridian has played everybody but Macomb, their 2 wins being over the teams below them, and losses being to the teams above them. PCA Laurel beat Meridian. Muddy River Hattiesburg lost to Meridian. Laurel beat Meridian, and the Muddy River Counselors lost to PCA. So Laurel has yet to play Hattiesburg or Macomb, and so there's just a lot. There's a lot to be said about that division. Definitely, you have a top 3 right now with PCA, Laurel, Meridian. They're all really close in points. The Counselors lost all 3 of those, but they showed some competitive games against them. You know, staying in the teens when it comes to losing to them. Hattiesburg beat Macomb by a good bit, so Hattiesburg's going to be a competitive team as well. So there's a lot to be said about that division, and all the games will be fun to look at to see how it's going. The Muddy River Counselors 9-0 record, and then you're talking about overall 7-0 in conference, and their 2 non-conference wins were to good teams, beating Hillcrest Christian, which is a team here in the Jackson area. They were 3-1 going into the game, had 2 wins. 2 wins over public school opponents. So you're talking about a good team coming in to play the Counselors. Went up 10-0 in the game. Hillcrest did halfway through the first quarter. So he had a 10-0 score. And the Counselors went on a ridiculous 62-13 run in the 12 minutes remaining in that first half to make it a 60-23 halftime score. Unreal run for the Counselors. They're able to continue that against Schiff, winning that one 90-41 with a 35-4 first quarter. And the Schiff team was undefeated going into the game. So the Counselors really rolling right now. But then they go into Salem Heights. Laurel gives a good challenge. They do want to get some wins, though. Lost to the Victors and lost to Laurel, or lost to PCA rather, and then lost to the Counselors. So but they're a good, talented team as well. So that'll be interesting to see. But wrote an article about the Counselors that is on the TSJW Network website. That is tsjwnetwork.net, and that is where all the scores, standings, and schedules, everything that I'm referencing right now, that is from the website tsjwnetwork.net. So now I'm going to bring on Coach Cliff Jenkins. He will be on the show with us right now. And Coach, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Trellis, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Coach, we're kind of talking about that girls division a little bit, and it's really competitive. You guys lost to PCA by 1 point, beat Meridian by 9, beat the Counselors by 19. That's your 2-1 conference record. You've also played some non-conference games as well. Just kind of talk about your team. This is your first year head coaching the girls 18U program. Of course, you've been coach of the boys programs, won 2 championships in 18U, and I think 2 in 16U as well, 2 or 3. I think it was 2. So you've been coaching in this league for a while, but your first time as 18U girls coach for Laurel, coming off a year where they lost some seniors, still have some talent though on your team. Just kind of talk about working with this team and getting them over that hump. I mean, obviously it's a 1 point hump. You're talking about just playing a better last minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So, last year I coached 14U girls, and so got good record, good chemistry with them. kind of know those players and what to expect. Coming into this year with the 18 new girls, we've got several older girls that this is my first year coaching them. New coach, some new systems, new defenses, new offenses, just different ways of doing things. And then some younger girls moving up into some starting roles where last year they played some on varsity. Some of them got quite a few minutes on varsity, but it's different when you're carrying some of the starting responsibility. And so early season, we've kind of been inconsistent. We've had some good spurts where we looked good, had some, like 18-2 quarters and 19-3 quarters, that kind of stuff, and then turn around the same game and have those quarters flipped where we've just kind of played inconsistent. Some of that inconsistency comes from we're working out sub rotations right now, trying to figure out who really fits where and what circumstances. So we've got just got a lot going on right now. The girls are taking it well, good spirits. They've got great hustle, got plenty of talent on the bench and on the floor, and just really trying to get consistent and kind of work out where we're at right now. But overall, feeling good about where we're headed.
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned the consistency, and I want to ask you a little bit more about that. So as far as your team being consistent, what do you mean by that, and what you're kind of looking for in terms of that quality for your team?
Yeah, so we have spurts. Basketball's a game of runs.
Yeah.
It's not all unexpected that teams, go on runs, momentum shifts, that kind of stuff. We seem to have periods where we're really checked in, we're really aggressive, shots are falling well, girls are feeling good, and then we kind of come out flat, and shots aren't falling. Defense is not picking up like it should, and then we turn it around and get back into the game and go back on a good run. It's so we're trying to learn how to play an even keel, checked in, plugged in game the whole game. And once we get some of that kind of stuff under control, some of the mental consistency, once we get some of that kind of stuff under control, I look forward to what's ahead of them.
Yeah, and so now kind of looking at this league, and you can't make any judgments too early because you're talking about you're still in the first half of the season.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, you can see that you guys, Meridian and PCA, are the top three teams at the top. Then you got the Counselors and the Forerunners, and then Macomb. But you've played some of these teams. You've played PCA, you've played Meridian, you played the Muddy River Counselors. Probably the three teams that might be the most challenged to you. Mm-hmm. Those three teams are different in style. By a good amount. So just kind of how do you prepare for those games and prepare your girls to play against three different type of teams like that?
Yeah, that's always a challenge. But we try to do as much scouting as we can. Try to figure out who their players are in practices prior to. We try to set up like most teams would. We try to set up and replicate what we expect the other team to do. We tweak our sets, tweak our defensive assignments, our offensive looks, and just really try to be prepared for what we're going to face when we see that group of girls.
Yes, so Coach, we do appreciate you joining the show, and you've been on the show every year. I'm pretty sure since we started it, even the year you weren't coaching, I think we brought you on as a guest. So definitely appreciate you all through these years.
Yeah, appreciate you, Trellis. Thanks for everything you do.
Yeah, for sure. And so that's Coach Cliff Jenkins. But I do have one more question for you, Coach. Yeah. I do have one more question. So you did coach 14 of you last year, and and what's interesting is that a lot of the girls that are playing now on your varsity were on that 14 of you last year. How did that experience with that 14 group, which y'all did do a lot of winning, help jumpstart you coaching all of them?
Yeah, so it really made it pretty natural. The bulk of our varsity team really is some of those 14 new girls who have moved up. Our 16U team is that same group of girls. So other than a few players difference from game to game, it really kind of the heart of that team is those girls that I came through with last year. I kind of know them, know what to expect out of them, strengths and weaknesses. So, it made it a natural flow into it.
Yep. And Coach, I appreciate you joining us.
All right, Trellis. Have a good night.
Oh yeah, you too.
Thanks.
Um, so folks, that was Coach Cliff Jenkins. Definitely always have appreciated him. Been a big TSJW Network supporter from the beginning. And so we will move ahead to look at some of these games for this next week around the conference. Now, we are coming up on Thanksgiving break, and next week is Thanksgiving. So, November 22nd, which is Friday, Laurel and Hattiesburg face off. Should have asked Coach a little bit about that coming up matchup, but anyway, Laurel and Hattiesburg taking each other on. That is in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So that's the first time these two teams will have faced off. 18U girls. I would definitely say that Laurel would have the edge in that one. Laurel, they did well against the Counselors, just based on the matchups that they've had. I would expect Laurel to be able to handle Hattiesburg, and it's just based on experience too. Talent and experience is on Laurel's side, and even though they did lose those three girls from last year's team, they still do have two starters returning, and then even with Emily Beach and Morgan Taylor. And then when you talk about Carmelina Santos, she's a good player as well that did play a lot on that team last year. So they do have a lot of experience on their team to go off of while they're building the experience with the other players as well. Also, 18U boys, of course, between Laurel and Hattiesburg. I think this one will be interesting to see. Now, Laurel has advantages with size over Hattiesburg, and Hattiesburg does have a couple of real good shooters. The big question is whether they're hitting or not. For sure, they came out hitting against the Counselors, and that was it was interesting when they gave them a good start to the ball game. So if they're hitting shots, they can definitely give Laurel a run for their money. But I would give Laurel the edge just because of size, and then they've also got quickness on their side. And the Nighthawks did have a good performance against the Counselors, particularly at the end of the ball game. So I would give Laurel the slight edge over Hattiesburg, but we'll see. I'm definitely open to seeing what'll happen in that game. Laurel Nighthawks and the Hattiesburg Foreigners. That is Friday night. Also Friday night, Meridian and Macomb. The first time these two teams will take each other on. In girls, Meridian Macomb. I think Meridian will take this one. Meridian's doing pretty well. They have a solid go to them this year. They're 2-2 in conference. They're going to be looking to have a winning record in conference. Taking on Macomb at Macomb. 18U boys, Meridian and Macomb. I think this is going to be a really good game. I think this is going to be a good test for both teams. Meridian and 18U, they are 2-5 in conference. Macomb is 1-2. So Meridian's played a lot of games. Their losses to the Victors, to the Counselors, to PCA, to Laurel. Lost to Laurel by 9. And I do believe their other loss, I'm not sure at the moment, but they've lost 5. 2-5 conference record for Meridian. They're looking to get some wins. And you're talking about a team that's going to be very competitive. And I know that they were missing a couple of players for some of those losses, but this is the time where you want to turn it around. They've already gotten 7 games under their belt. This will be a big one for Meridian. They're going to really want to take out Macomb. Now, Macomb has height, and it just depends on how they play. I've seen them play 2 games. They played against the Muddy River Counselors, a game in which they performed well and even kept it real close early before the Counselors ended up pushing it out, getting the win by 23. But against PCA, they completely laid an egg. PCA beat them by over 40 points, just beat them real bad. So I know that Macomb is wanting to have a good night here against Meridian. Don't really know what to expect out of that one. We'll see what happens. Also on Friday night, the Muddy River Counselors take on the Tupelo Titans. This will be the second meeting between these two teams. First time the Counselors won 81-25 at B Hall in Raymond. This time Tupelo hosts. And so, that's a 3.5 hour drive for the Counselors. So that might make it interesting for Tupelo. Tupelo might be able to have a little bit more of an advantage than they did last time. I do think the Counselors will win this ball game, but we'll have to see what happens. And Lord willing, that'll be live on Counselors TV, the Muddy River Counselors and the Tupelo Titans. Saturday, in Hattiesburg. Macomb and Hattiesburg rematch. We saw it from last week. In girls, Hattiesburg won 47-27 over Macomb. I think Hattiesburg will win again in Hattiesburg. Macomb and Hattiesburg, 18U boys, I think we'll have another really good matchup. I think Macomb will get it again then. Macomb just has a lot of height. They have a lot of height. And just like I was saying with Hattiesburg and Laurel, they're going to play two teams with a good amount of height. And I think the height might mess with Hattiesburg a little bit. But the thing is, they've got some guys who scrap and they can shoot the basketball. So we'll see. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if Hattiesburg beat Macomb, but if I was to take somebody, I would think that Macomb might edge it out. But we will see, just based on what they did last week. But that might even help Hattiesburg. The fact that they lost to him last week might help them come back and win this time. Also on Saturday, Laurel and Tupelo. So Laurel will be at Tupelo. I think Laurel will win this game. I think Laurel has more advantages than Tupelo does. I think they'll be able to get this win up in Tupelo. And then on the following Monday, November 25th, we got Laurel and Macomb. And so in girls, I think Laurel's going to win. I think they'll win by a big margin. In the boys, in Macomb, Laurel. Wow, and that now you're getting the height taking on each other, and I think Laurel, just based on a little bit more experience playing together, I think Laurel may have the edge in this one. I think Macomb could beat them for sure, but we'll have to see. That's another good one. We have a lot of teams right in here in the middle of the conference that are going to be very competitive with each other. You got the Jackson Victors, Laurel Nighthawks, Macomb Gators, Meridian Flyers, Hattiesburg Forerunners, all those teams, even the Tupelo Titans in there, possibly. All those teams, I think, will be very competitive right there between the 3 seed and the 8 seed. I couldn't really tell you how it's going to pan out. It's looking like the top 2 seeds will be pretty solidly in the camps of the Counselors and the Paladins. Those 2 teams look like they are the best 2 teams. They had a good game against each other, 62-53 win for the Counselors. But those look like the top 2 teams, which was the championship game last season. But I think there's a lot of things to keep a lookout on. And then in the girls' conference, the top 3 teams are a scramble. PCA's number 1 right now, Laurel's number 2, and Meridian's number 3. But then the Counselors could even make some noise in there, and maybe even Hattiesburg. So got a lot of listen, you got to keep up with this conference because it is interesting and it's some fun basketball. But folks, we appreciate you joining us. I really want to remind you again to go ahead and hit that subscribe button to the TSJW Network YouTube channel. Why not subscribe? Just go ahead and do it. It doesn't cost you anything. Just go ahead and do it. Hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you for sure. So I am Trellis Williams, and with that, until next week, we out.